happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? I figure if we go an hour 45 today, we hit the 6 o'clock line and we could still build lineups. Sound about right for a 10-game slate? We'll see what happens. Welcome to the MLB DFS Lineup Card Live. We're going to talk through this whole 10-game slate. I think it's a good one. Hopefully everybody out there had a good day yesterday. That afternoon slate seems like ages ago at this point in my mind. Had an up and down day. Didn't really put anything in any valuable spot, but I had a few good looking lineups that were, hamstrung by a few underperformances. So not the greatest day in the world, but enjoyed the light day from a just hanging out kind of a perspective. Spent the afternoon just kind of chilling on a somewhat lousy day in my house, and then snuck out late last night, 10:30 to check out Spider-Man finally, and enjoyed that. That went till 10:30 start, so actually started 11 after previews and everything. Enjoyed that though. Went till somewhere around 1 o'clock. Was surprised by the ending. I don't know if anybody out there seen it, has thoughts on it, but just really, really well done in terms of the animation. They blended a bunch of different art styles together this time, so it was really cool. The way they hopped between universes. A lot of the characters were back, and a lot of fun new ones. Really cool concept and everything, and just enjoy the way they're executing those movies. So that was fun. Looks like we've got a good group in the chat so far. Lone Wolf DFS, Stephen B, Fanatic, Larry C. What's going on, gang? Yeah, no spoilers. I'm big on not spoiling things. Definitely didn't want to I was like I said, I was surprised by the ending, but yeah, nobody give up what happened at the end if you're out there and chatting about it or anything like that, please. That's still in theaters, only a few weeks, and it's been sold out, like I was saying yesterday. All through yesterday, I was going to go at 2 in the afternoon, sold out, 5 in the afternoon, sold out. Finally found one with 10:30 with a few seats in it, so went to that. What's going on, Power? How are you? Welcome. Happy Friday to everybody. Hopefully everybody was over at Guns Show and enjoyed that and gave him some likes and subscribed to his stuff behind the paywall. He's got a ton of good content. We were going to try and get together. He DM'd me earlier this morning. I actually meant to reach out to him yesterday and completely forgot. Also, Rambo dies in the book. I completely forgot about it. That would have been a better ending for the movie. They were originally going to do that. I forget whether it was Stallone that talked him out of it or the theaters or whatever. But yeah, that's supposed to end. Bleaker ending. But yeah, that first Rambo movie is also so far off of what, I don't know if you saw Podiatry and Stoner, I don't know if you saw the most recent Rambo movie, where he's a total nut and just literally cuts a guy's heart out with a machete and stuff. I think we're a little bit far removed from the commentary on PTSD that the original Rambo was supposed to be. Anyway, let's get into this one. Larry's saying, have I ever gone to the IMAX in Lincoln Center or Afaro downtown? Two good theaters in New York. I haven't been to the IMAX in Lincoln Center. I hit the IMAX in the Times Square AMC a lot. That was I was a block from there where my old office was. My office was in a stupid location in Times Square, in the heart of Manhattan. There's a Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville opened across the street now from where my old office was, directly across the street. I can guarantee you, my old boss thinks he's the most popular person in that place. Probably goes there every single day. So if you ever need to find him. Anyway, in the off chance that he's watching this, what's up, Todd? How are you? Haven't spoken to him in quite a while. Anyway, true gun in the left, Terry in the right. Hey. Can't do much better than that. Mute the right ear, listen to Gun, and then hop on mine when he's done. Hunter Bowen says, what's up? What's going on, bud? Doing good. Having a good Friday. Got the article up. Took a while today. Get through 10 games, but layered a lot of content in there, a lot of details since I had some time to kind of wind my way through it. Dalbec got called up? No shit. Awesome. My guy, finally. Hopefully they're going to trade him. Hopefully he gets a real shot. I mean, dude's a professional hitter. Dude's a major league hitter. He absolutely ropes the ball when he makes contact. He's been raking in the minor leagues. Just frozen ropes to the outfield. What would you define Todd for? You wouldn't. Don't worry about it. IT services, I guess. If you're in the market for IT services, that's what I used to sell for him. Nice, friendly guy. Nothing but good things to say about those years. Drugs. No comment. Smash the like button, you filthy animals. Yeah, that's right. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe. Let's jump in. I think I got all the confirmed lineups. So it looks like the Brewers just dropped. So interesting slate. Like I was starting out saying, I think there's a pretty fair amount of pitching, But a lot of it's like underperforming talents that we used to believe in, some guys that are like upstart young kids, some just crappy starters at low prices in good situations, good-ish situations. So it's a really interesting slate. We've got the ridiculous Coors game that's going to have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout in Coors Field. I imagine that's going to be pretty popular. So it feels like that opens up a lot of different spots, like the Padres. Probably the Blue Jays will be a little bit under-owned to where they would be comparative to a non-Coors slate, despite having that massive, massive total. Like, I expect they'll be the second most popular team on the slate, but probably would deserve to be the most popular team on the slate in most situations where we didn't have Trout and Ohtani and that team at Coors Field. So hopefully that opens that situation up a little bit. The Pods, I actually really like the looks of the Red Sox in my model, but that was before we got this version of the Red Sox lineup that we'll talk about in a little bit that's got Rob Refsnyder leading off. It still looks good. I didn't get a chance to look up and down the lineup. So it's Wong. Yeah, I like Wong hitting 6. We'll talk about it when we get there, but that's a spot for me that I think is maybe under-owned by the field. It's going up against Giolito, which I don't love doing, but we'll get into it. I think there's a lot of interesting spots on this slate. So let me open this up to the... got the Brewers lineup in there. We'll open this up to this view, and we'll dive in. Sox playing Hamilton again with short, which is not bueno. Yeah, I mean, at least it's the dead minimum on both sides, or I think both sides. But very, very cheap, let's put it that way. But yeah, would love to see Bobby D just get in there and get some shortstop eligibility. He can do it. He's not. They had him there. They were using him there in spring training. I don't know if he get into a game at the show at short. I forget. But I know he was chasing that shortstop eligibility, which would be just awesome to have on a hitter like Dahlbeck. Anyway. He's not in this game, so let's start off with my Yankees going up against the Rangers. Hopefully Melissa from the chat is going to get some dry weather at Yankee Stadium. I think they'll be okay to play. I didn't actually pull up whether that was what I meant to do between the start of the show and before, so let me check that out real quick. But seems like it's just moderately rainy, but not terrible out around here. Let me pull up what the guys over at that other place are saying. See if there's anything crazy going on. Yeah, it's what I expected. It's a lot of yellow and orange type stuff. I don't feel like we've got anything that's in super danger of getting postponed, especially the one here in New York. Like, if I had tickets, I would be not leaving yet. I got another hour or two before I would need to leave, but I would be, not thinking about not going. Let's put it that way. I've got tickets tomorrow, plan on going. So I think we're all right in this one in terms of the weather. Might get rained on, but I don't really want any part of either one of these pitchers, I don't think. Either one of these guys could deliver that oddball mid-price, low-price start. Dane Dunning at 5,700 could easily pay that off, especially against this version of the Yankees. But he hasn't been great this season, 14.6% strikeouts. His limiting power okay, 1.5% home run rate, but there's hard hits there. There's premium contact and barrels there. I feel like he's just gotten lucky to keep home runs down that much. 2.78 ERA is very good. 64 and 2/3 with 8 starts, bunch of bullpen innings mixed in there, some long relief. Only striking out 14.6% though. Like, we're trying to thread a really thin needle, and we've got a bunch of guys at similar pricing. I do think there's some value there for a couple shots of Dane Dunning for the DK slate. What is a hitter price on DK? On FanDuel at 78, I don't know whether we're chasing a quality start. You'll probably get a win for him if he holds the Yankees down a little bit. I expect the Rangers to win this game, but it's not a great spot for FanDuel. It could be on a weird pitching slate. It could be one of those stupid spots like we saw last night. Several of the guys we talked about on that slate, what was it, JP Sears, a couple of the stupid pitchers we talked about came through, and a couple of, like, Logan Allen fell short on that slate. I think that was the same slate, if I'm goldfish braining that together properly. But we've seen just again and again this year a lot of weird pitchers succeed, a lot of guys that we used to believe in fail. And like I said at the top, this is exactly that kind of slate. There's a lot of guys that we used to believe in and we're kind of tepid confidence in right now. Clark Schmidt on the other side of this one, same kind of story. I think there's some value there. 7,277. The price is fine for a kid who's got a 23.3% strikeout rate. He gives up too much premium contact, though. 8.8% barrel rate, 44.2% hard hits, 91.4 miles an hour average exit velo. And it's not like he's doing that alongside a 30+% strikeout rate where he's a premium arm and we can't avoid him despite the contact and, we tolerate the contact and he's keeping runs down. He's got a 4.65 ERA. He's got a 4.09 xFIP. Boone typically hooks him if he puts runners on in the fifth. So we're got a danger zone in terms of even booking the win, let alone the quality start. I just don't love going to Schmidt against one of baseball's best lineups. I just don't see the need to do it. He could get there. Again, it's one of those spots where he could find 5 to 8 strikeouts, give you 6 clean, the quality start, the win, and all of a sudden you've got a good Clark Schmidt spot on your hands. Gunn says, I need you to be more confident on pitchers today than I am. I've got a few takes. I'll put it that way. But yeah, confident is probably the wrong word for this slate. There's a lot of, I'm not so sure I want to hang my hat on that type guys today. I think we're probably seeing it pretty similarly, Gunn. Today's show brought to you by the captain, number 2, Derek Jeter. Number 2. So Rangers, Yankees, I think you can go to bats on both sides. More interest in the Rangers, their upside with all their talent going up against Schmidt here. I think Schmidt's going to give up a couple of long balls. I think we're in for probably a pretty offensively oriented day at the stadium tonight, despite any weather, despite, it's 71 and cloudy. I think it'll probably be mid-60s tonight, but it's not going to be like overly cold, and Yankee Stadium doesn't really hold, unless the wind is blowing in really, really strongly. I don't think it really matters. So I think we can target bats here. I wrote about the Rangers in terms of their ability to use the bottom 2 guys as a wraparound, just as like a good starting point. If you're hand building a lineup and you want to build with the Rangers, put either Ezekiel Duran or Leota Taveras in as their first player and build from there. And just look at those guys as a leadoff man. It's just going to immediately differentiate you from so many different lineups. And you're getting 2 premium hitters. These are 2 guys who are well regarded on their way up and are finally hitting their stride as major leaguers this year. 200 plate appearances for Duran, 310, 355, 524, a 214 ISO, 9 homers, 4 stolen bases. We saw that in drips and drabs over the past couple seasons when he got chances, and now he's finally earned a full-time job. 3 positions on FanDuel, 3,200. Taveras in the outfield has been outstanding this year, 299, 352, 481, has 8 home runs quietly, 7 stolen bases, a 131 WRC+. So you pop one of these 2 guys in, you can put them together with both of these guys. They help offset the pricing. They help offset the popularity. So you can go both of these guys with one of these guys and then take your pick from any of these guys as your next man in. It's just a good way to start that lineup out rather than just kind of straight lining it through this like a lot of people will do. And you don't sacrifice much quality doing that. You can build a lineup from the top down and skip over somebody in the middle and go to Mitch Garver. You can definitely use Mitch Garver as a catcher on the DraftKings slate for 4,100. Tremendous power hitter as a catcher. Missed a lot of time this year, but already has 3 home runs on the season, a 220 ISO. In years past, has delivered power, 10 home runs in 215 plate appearances last year, 13 in 243 the year before that. So we know there's power there for Garver. You can go to this Rangers lineup just basically day after day, up and down. Robbie Grossman, not ideal in the 6th spot, but at least he's cheap. And it's a spot where people will be like, Robbie Grossman, no, let me go down to somebody else. So I do think you gain a little bit of value back in that. Like, he's not the best player in the world. He's sitting 228, 310, 371 with a 90 WRC+. 7 home runs, though, for a $2,500 hitter. You can go to that from time to time. I don't think it's bad. Switch hitter in the middle of the lineup. Larry saying Duran, so good with MPA, which is great. Yeah, one of my favorite hitters to flex around, similar to Arcia from the Braves. Just a guy I think has a ton of value with 3-position eligibility. And then Mookie Betts is my other 3-position favorite, but we're obviously talking about a different tier of player. Joker's enthusiastic about it. He loves those 3-position guys. And come here, pal. Turn around. Turn around, lay down. Every day with this dog. Go lay down, Joker. Go on. All right, so let's talk Yankees on the other side of this one. Jake Bauers still weirdly in that leadoff spot despite his 29% strikeout rate. 11.3% walks is very good. A 315 on base percentage is 30% strikeouts is weird in the leadoff spot. That's a strange decision day after day. I think they would probably be better served going to somebody else there. They're getting the version of the lineup. So we've got IKF in the lineup instead of Bader. Bader was oddly the earlier in the day was the most expensive Yankees hitter on the FanDuel slate at 3,100. Now he's not in the lineup, so Glaber is at 3,000. The Yanks are super cheap against Dane Dunning, which is the appeal of going to this lineup here. So you can roster Bowers for 2,700 from the top. He's obviously got power when he connects. He's been hitting well with 6 home runs in 124 plate appearances at 250 ISO. None of it's real. But for 2,700 on both sites at first base on FanDuel, outfield on DK, it doesn't have to be real. It just has to be there in the short term, and he's been doing it in this little short term. And Dunning's not a threatening pitcher on the mound, so I think there's plenty of value in going to Bowers. Torres is obviously a good player. 5,100, 3,000. He's priced right on both sides. Better price on FanDuel at second base. 12 home runs on the season. Creating runs 11% better than average. Perfectly serviceable. Stanton's been absolutely lost. Trying to hit the ball to the moon every time he's on up at the plate. But 16.9% barrels, 52.1% hard hits when he has made contact. 6 home runs. You know you're just home run hunting with Stanton. You know you're doing the same thing. Well, Donaldson's not in the lineup. But Rizzo, I think, gives you a little bit more quality in terms of the hit tool. I think he was hurt. I think he's maybe coming back a little bit now, feeling a little bit better in terms of the neck shoulder injury when he got jammed at first base on that play a few weeks ago. That coincided with the dip for Rizzo. So I think if he's feeling better in terms of just physically when he swings the bat, he didn't want to go on the IL. I think there's a potential that he's going to swing back around in terms of the hit tool here. The power is still there, so I like Rizzo at first base. He's cheap now, 4,000, 2,800. Probably not going to have much ownership. DJ has had a weird, bad season, but 3 positions on FanDuel is fine for 2,500. For a hitter that I believe in, significantly over time, still has a 46.3% hard hit this year, 7 home runs on the season, just hasn't been good overall. Multi-position on DK for 3,200 is good. IKF is not really a hitter. 4 home runs on the season are incidental. 76 WRC plus is right. 237 batting average is right. 275 on base is right. He's not a hitter. He's an okay defender in the outfield. Billy McKinney is a decent bat. He's had a great little story over 46 plate appearances, former top prospect, 3 home runs, 318, 348, 636. Another guy that's kind of like an enjoy it while it lasts, but we've gotten a lot out of some of those guys this year with the Jake Bergers of the world. So I think you can keep going back to McKinney as a lefty bat in Yankee Stadium, 2,500 on both sites. Easy play to make when you're going to this team. There's some upside there, and there's definitely value in all those cheap Yankees. So I think we can get to some Yankees. Definitely want to get to some Rangers. Very, 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 very tepid interest in any shares of Dane Dunning, and it would only be at 5,700 on the DK slate. I don't think there's upside at 78 on FanDuel. Limited interest in Clark Schmidt shares. I think the quality start, even 5 complete innings is in question. 6 is pushing it against this Rangers team. All that power that he allows, I don't love it. So it's primarily bats in this one. Yankees for value, Rangers for upside. Love the pitcher in this one. Getting a good projection. I actually cut Logan Gilbert a little bit for innings. My model was going wild with innings for him, so I was getting an even bigger number than we're showing here. But he's one of my higher projected pitchers on the day. I think he's had a couple of bumpy starts, but overall it's a pitcher I really, really like. 26% strikeout rate, only 5% walks, a 3.61 xFIP, 4.31 ERA, 3.41 on the home runs, 9.9 on the barrels, a little bit of premium contact in the way here. But I think we're going to get him at pretty low ownership against an Orioles team that people like after he's had a couple, like I said, bumps in the road in his last few starts. I think it's a really interesting spot. And with the number that he's pulling in my model here, I'm happy to go to it. That's why I wanted to leave it, kind of high. It's a spot that I'm going to get to. The last couple of starts, let's see, he's 14 total starts, other than the recent stretch that included a 4-inning start and a 3 and a third inning start. He's been reliable for depth and a good chance of the quality start. I thought I had written about the actual depth there, but I didn't. But in his game log, he's got a good handful of games where he pitched deep into games and chased quality starts in a row there before those couple of clunkers. So I'm going to go to Gilbert here against the Orioles. There's enough strikeouts in that lineup. Like Gunnar off the top, he walks a lot. So does Adley. Adley doesn't strike out, but Gunnar does. 30% strikeout rate still for Gunnar, even amongst his, in with his breakout. So I'm going to go to that. I'm going to target those, 23s and 25s all the way down the lineup here. A lineup still without Mountcastle in it. I think there's upside in going to shares of Gilbert, especially if he's low owned around the industry. So I like that spot. Only 9,000 on the FanDuel slate. It's a good pivot from what I think is going to be a highly owned Joe Musgrove, who also projects very well for me. So I'm really interested in him as a pivot for ownership on that FanDuel slate. It's a better spot for Musgrove, but Musgrove's one of those guys that it's like, I'm sure he was one of those guys that Gunn was referring to of like, do we have confidence in that spot? I do, but at ownership, I also have a reasonable amount of confidence in this spot at no ownership. So I think it's a good pivot for 100 more on FanDuel. It's a different price. I think it's $1,000 different on DK. So it's just kind of a different play, but I expect he'll be significantly lower owned than a lot of the other pitchers on the DK slate. So I think there's good upside here for going to Logan Gilbert shares. Kyle Gibson on the other side, not so much. There's definitely strikeout upside. There's definitely potential for Gibson to go out and have one of those starts. He had, that one start against the Tigers this year at the beginning of the year where he struck out like 10, 12, something like that. I don't think he's had any kind of similar start, if I'm remembering correctly. 17.7% strikeouts on the season suggests that I am remembering correctly. 9.1% swinging, 26.5% CSW. He's fine. He's a serviceable veteran. He could eat some innings here. But the big start, they're few and far between for Gibson. What you're playing for with Gibson, 8,100, 9,200, you'd be playing for the Mariners' strikeout upside and a clean game. You need him to avoid, obviously, the power in Kelenic, Julio Rodriguez, Ty France, Teoscar Hernandez, Cal Raleigh, Yanio Suarez. There's a ton of power in that lineup. There are a bunch of free swingers, 26.5% strikeout rate for the season for that confirmed lineup. There's plenty of upside for strikeouts, but Gibson hasn't really been finding them effectively this season, and I don't think he's correctly priced to be a true value play, especially not on FanDuel. 9,200 is a misprice on FanDuel. He's just too high. So I don't think I'm going there on FanDuel. As a few darts on DK, I think maybe you can get away with it. 8,100, that's okay on DK. I'd rather have him in the sevens in this spot. I definitely think we can go to Mariners bats against Kyle Gibson. It's a play for power upside. You can see it's not a huge day for power across the league. There's only a couple teams that are drawing significant power ratings, a lot in like the 7s to 8 type range. So those numbers for the Mariners are actually a pretty decent mark, especially in the top 6 there in the high to mid 7s. You got Kelenic, you've got Julio Rodriguez pushing the 8s, Teoscar Hernandez up over an 8 my home run model. A couple guys with double-digit home run totals for the season. So I think there's good value in going to some shares of Kelenic, some shares of Julio, string it together from 1 through 6 at least in the Mariners lineup. They're relatively cheap for their talents, especially on FanDuel. There's a lot of cheap bats there. And then the bottom of the lineup, Caballero I think is better when he's leading off, but still gets on base at a good clip, has created runs 14% better than average as a low-end infielder at a cheap price and no ownership at the bottom of the lineup. You can go to shares of him. You can go to Tommy Murphy with the idea of some significant contact. It wasn't a large sample last year, right? He had, what was the sample? Yeah, 42 plate appearances last year. So that's where that's 19% barrels and 57.1% hard hits. That's very small sample. But a guy who makes that kind of contact, if he was doing it over a larger sample, would be extremely interesting. 2 home runs, 83 in 83 plate appearances, a 179 ISO for Murphy this year. Cheap, low-owned catcher. I think you can go to some shares of the Orioles. I just don't love we all know that Aaron Hicks has turned into Superman ever since we talked about him. That's fine. But I still don't love that option. It's kind of a weak bottom end. Frazier and Urias are both perfectly capable. Mateo can be a superstar caliber player when he's going right in terms of his, moderate power and his amazing speed, but he's just been a complete mess since the end of April. So I don't know how much I want to go to Mateo. I don't know how much I want to go to Urias. He's a decent power bat in terms of being like a cheap guy that nobody goes to when the Orioles are popular, but in a spot where I don't think they're going to be all that popular, he's not that appealing. So like after Hayes, and you can throw even Ryan O'Hearn. I know he's been raking over 98 plate appearances, but I don't love Ryan O'Hearn as the cleanup hitter in this lineup. So for me, it's really like it's Gunnar, it's Rushman, Santander, Austin Hayes. I'll take some shares of O'Hearn certainly if I'm going to the Orioles multiple times, but he's not a priority for me in any way. He's a lefty. He's obviously on the better side of splits. He's been absolutely mashing the ball in the tiny sample, 13.2% barrels, 55.9% hard hits. I don't want to undersell him. 6 home runs in 98 plate appearances is outstanding, but we know he's not that hitter in the long term. So it's kind of a flawed version of the Orioles lineup right now. There's a lot of talent on the way for this team. There's a lot here right now at the top end. But with Mountcastle out, my interest is a little bit more limited. So minor shares probably of Orioles bats. More interest in Logan Gilbert. Only a little bit of interest in Kyle Gibson. It would be DK only, and small interest just chasing strikeouts. Chasing 6 clean innings and 6 strikeouts against the Mariners would probably be a pretty good start for Gibson there if they can book the win for him too. The win's in question though with Gilbert on the hill with the pretty stout Mariners lineup. So I don't love the pitching side on the Orioles. Minor interest in the Orioles bats. Some interest in the Mariners bats going up against Gibson. Larry says Gibson was less than 10% owned last time I looked. Yeah, I saw similar numbers on a different site, so it's an interesting spot. That's seems to be how he's projecting out around the industry. So yeah, I'm very interested in that spot. Could easily go pop. Right? It's just picking a spot on a starter that I like, who I think is underperformed, so he'll slip under ownership. He's at a good price across the industry comparative to some of the other options on the slate, in whom we really have wavering confidence. So why not take my shots with Gilbert? And I know I get that Hunter Bone says, the O's are just too good for me to get him. But it is, like I was pointing out, I think it's an underwhelming version of that Orioles lineup in general. So you can take shares of the O's on the other side of it and hedge it off a little bit. And I think I would if I get carried away with Gilbert shares. I'll have a few stacks of O's. But I expect him to put up a good start here. Poe DJ and Stoner says Bassett, Noda, Kemp, Bichette, Chapman, Trout, Warren, Renfroe, Dickerson on FanDuel. Please play for my baseball soul. Yeah, that's going to go one way or the other very, very, very firmly. That's a binary type lineup in each one of those spots. That's a hit or miss. All right, let's take a look. D-backs lineup came out. I'll grab that while I'm teeing up the next game. This one's this Mets and Phillies matchup. It's kind of interesting. If I feel like Senga should be at a lower price. He projects out okay for me. You can see he's competitive with the top pitching scores that we've seen so far. I just don't really trust him. And I don't really trust him against a good team. I think he could come out and have a dominant night for strikeouts. He's got a 28.3% strikeout rate this year. He's been very good in terms of finding strikeouts. 12.2% swing, 29% CSW rate, 71 and a third, 13 starts. Gives you fairly reliable innings. I don't love the contact that he allows, but it hasn't really cost him in terms of home runs. Only a 2.93% home run rate. But what I really don't like about him is the whip and the walks. I mean, the whip is because of the walks primarily, but 13.4% walks is it's too much. It's too much to feed into a good Phillies team. It's too much to feed into a lineup that has a guy like Kyle Schwarber up at the top. This is going to be fascinating to watch between his strikeout rate, and his walk rate, and the amount of home runs that he hits and the amount of contact that he gives up. This is going to be 3 times over a 3 true outcomes matchup, and it's going to be fun to watch. My thinking favors Schwarber, just with all the contact that he manages. It's with all the ability to draw the walks. I think he's going to wait on his pitch, and I think he's got good upside. It's shining through in the home run model with 12.82 in the home run model against Senga here for Schwarber. You can see good mark for home runs for Bryce Harper a little bit further down the lineup. I like this Phillies lineup. I think there's value there. They're fairly priced on both sites. Harper at $6K on the DK slate is maybe pushing it a little bit, given that he hasn't really been mashing for power. He's been making good contact, but he hasn't been hitting home runs yet. 3 home runs in 187 plate appearances is a little behind the curve for expectations for Harper, but he's been otherwise outstanding. I just feel like maybe we're talking about like a $5,600, $5,500 type DraftKings performer so far. But you're happy to pay for it, especially when everybody else is kind of a little bit cheap for their talents. So I think I'm more leaning into the Philly side of things. I would have some Senga. I'll have a little bit more probably on the FanDuel price, at the FanDuel price. 99 on FanDuel. That's a playable price for this pitcher. He can certainly get you there in terms of the clean innings. He can probably get you there in terms of the win bonus, the quality start, the strikeout upside. So there's some potential there. 24.1% strikeout rate across the Phillies lineup. I don't want to undersell the opportunity for him. I just don't trust him. And he's also, I feel like, burnt me a couple times. So this isn't one of my more confident spots for a pitcher. I will have some. I do trust my model here. So we'll go along for the ride with the model. But for me, it's not going to be a fun ride. And it's going to be a spot where if I've got good reason to go to, say, a Logan Gilbert for less, I will. That's kind of my read on Senga. But he's one of the more playable guys that I don't really believe in here, given the strikeout upside. Taijuan Walker on the other side, totally skippable, I think, at 9,400 on FanDuel. Could you get the good Taijuan Walker start that comes, 4 times a year? Sure, you could. He's a league average starter, so that means there are a couple spots of upside throughout the season. Overall, 20.6% strikeouts, 9.7% walks, too much contact, 8.1% barrels, 41% hard hits, 4.31 ERA, 4.42 xFIP. You know who all of this looks like? Looks exactly like Taijuan Walker over time. He is just the definition of a league average type starter. He's fine. At 7,700, there's arguably a little bit of upside against the Mets, particularly if you do happen to get that good day. If you find 6 clean innings, a win, handful of strikeouts, you're on your way. That's a good start for 7,700 on DK. So I think he's on that board, like the mid-range, not any faith in him, know what you're getting, know that you're booking an average pitcher against a good. Are the Mets good? Are we saying the Mets are a good offense against an offense that's got talented players in it? I think that's fair to say, at least. It's not a great spot. 94, I just don't want to do it on the FanDuel slate. I wouldn't begrudge anybody like a dart throw or two, but I don't think I'm even going to do it. I forgot to pull out the darts trophies. Somebody mentioned it in the chat. There's plaques. I don't actually have a trophy anymore. There's plaques over there. I don't think there's any in view. There's one in view, but it's up there. For Larry, who wanted to see the dart trophy. It's up there. Not a great view of it, but that was it. That's going back a ways at this point. That was in when I was living in Hoboken. We were in the Hoboken Darts League. It was a fun time. A lot of none of us were like dart players prior to that, but we were like, hey, this is something we could do to have an excuse to go out drinking every Thursday night, Wednesday night, either one. One or the other. So we were just all around the... No, there was a trophy, and I never said that, by the way. But I've got several individual plaques. That's the one for the B League championship that we won. There was an overall trophy. It was kind of unfair. The A League is like elite and much better than anybody in the B League. And to win the overall trophy, it was like the B League winner has to play the A League winner. So we got smoked in that. But then, have you ever seen the movie Beer League, where he steals the trophy at the end? Before that movie came out, a guy on our team, this older guy, Rick, who was on our team, I say older guy, I'm probably like his age now, but he actually did that, stole the trophy, brought it back to our bar. It stayed there for like 2 or 3 days until they tracked it down. So in the movie, they say that's the biggest asshole move of all time. I kind of agree with it, but I was happy to be a part of it. Larry says now, yeah, Hoboken's a fun town. Yep. Hoboken is definitely a fun town. Mile square with like 150 bars in it. All of New Jersey moves here in their 20s, or there in their 20s. I moved up the hill. I'm in Jersey City now. Not up the hill in like a class way, like physically up a hill after my apartment flooded during Sandy. I had 2 feet of the Hudson River in my apartment, which was on the ground floor during Sandy. So I bailed. I went to higher ground. Anyway, let's talk baseball. So we talked about the pitching in this one. Definitely want to get to some Phillies bats against Senga with all that downside that I talked about in terms of the free passes, in terms of some of the contact. So I'm looking Schwarbs, I'm looking Turner, Castellanos, Harper. It's a lineup I play up and down whenever I go to it. I think Edmundo Sosa is a perfectly capable hitter, especially at the dead minimum on FanDuel. I don't love him at third base as an alternate to like much more talented third baseman. But if you need a min-priced hitter, I don't think he's completely inept at the plate. A little bit of pop. I love the lefties in Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott down lineup there. I think Alec Bohm is a talented hitter for 4,000, 2,800 that you can get flexible positioning out of. And then you've got all the star power up top. So I like going to the Phillies. Get a little bit of the Mets maybe against Taijuan. Don't love the Mets in general. I feel like they're just, a 4-5 run kind of team most nights, unless you get the Petey Alonso double dong kind of a night. 23 homers on the season for Pete, 310 ISO, just a monumental power hitter. I do like the value in the Mets. I will say that 5,100 for Alonso, 3,400 across sites. That's too cheap for Pete Alonso. 4,500, 3,300 for Lindor. I know Lindor's underperformed, but he's still hitting for power. 14 home runs from a shortstop is nothing to sneeze at. 220 ISO, 106 WRC plus, despite the bad triple slash. Danny Vogelbach, Tommy Pham, Jeff McNeil, kind of veteran meh through the heart of the order there, and then you get Alvarez and Brett Beatty as premium rookies at the bottom of the lineup. So I kind of like them at the top. I kind of like them at the bottom. I don't love that 5, 6, 7 for the Mets, but they're usable parts. They're usable veterans for sure. Pham is actually having a pretty decent season. 7 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and 167 plate appearances is very good. 226 ISO, hitting the ball like Tommy Pham again, which you like to see from the veteran. 15.3% barrels, 51.4% hard hits. Both of those are actually outstanding metrics. So if you're looking for a little bit of cheap premium contact, a little bit of speed, maybe you get that from Tommy Pham. 3,000, 2,800. So you can go to the Mets, but it's not a priority spot by any means for me. I think it's just like you take them in the middle of the board kind of against the league average type pitcher. It's a league average type lineup against the league average type pitcher. So no real outstanding spot there in terms of the Mets. So probably more excited about Phillies bats. If I'm taking a pitcher, it's probably Kodai Senga. Fnatic says, my family's from South Jersey. Cape May Courthouse. Oh, right on. Cape May is very nice. Wildwood's nice. A lot of boardwalk scene down in Wildwood. Been down that way. You get more of the Philly crowd in Wildwood. I grew up in the Monmouth County area. I was in Red Bank, Middletown when I grew up. So I have like the whole the shore for me is like Point Pleasant, Seaside, all those places. The ones you see on the Jersey Shore, which kind of just friggin' ruined our reputation. Those guys are like 10% of like who you see out. If you're out of like, you know, a clubby type place on a Friday or Saturday night, it's like 60% of who you see out, but like that's a very specific Jersey Shore kind of a person. Most of us are quite nice. But that's my shore. Whereas I feel like down Wildwood area, you get a little bit more of like the Philly crowd, the South Jersey crowd. That's not saying anything negative about those folks. All nice people, except for Philly sports fans, obviously. We don't want to deal with them. So let's talk athletics. Let's talk Blue Jays. Blue Jays, one of the premium spots for offensive upside, I think, in this one. They're high priced, but I expect they're going to be super duper popular across sites. They're actually on the FanDuel slate. Looking at this lineup, they're not all that high priced. On DK, they're at fair prices, but one of the higher combinations of players. If you're going up and down the lineup, I think you're paying a lot for the combination, but they're well worth it against Caprillion here. 3.13% home run rate, 7% barrel rate. Those are his better marks. A 6.38 ERA, a 5.82 xFIP. 19.1% strikeouts is actually a little higher than you would expect. A decent swinging strike rate at 11.3, but 11.7% walks. Just gives up way too many opportunities, too much premium contact. Just not a good pitcher overall. He's a kid who was somewhat highly regarded coming up in the Yankees system, and then just, kind of got the boot in a trade and just has never really delivered at the major league level. I know he's had a couple of decent starts. I think he had a good one 2 starts back. Maybe it was his last start. Had a decent one, but just not a pitcher we believe in here, in a lineup that we absolutely believe in. So I think he can definitely fire away. I just expect the Blue Jays to be pretty popular. Like I said up top, I think it'll be the Angels and the Blue Jays as the top 2 teams, and maybe the Pods in there in terms of popularity. I'm just spitballing that. Yankees are the definition of a vomit stack. Yeah, I don't disagree. It's not great, but it's Yankee Stadium. There's a couple of power hitting lefties. There's a Giancarlo Stanton in there. There's a couple of guys like a DJ LeMahieu. Like over time, DJ LeMahieu's a fantastic hitter. Like something's clearly been going on with him for the last couple of years. There's some problems there. It's definitely a bad version of the lineup. They've been averaging less than 3.5 runs, fewer than 3.5 runs since Judge went out. So it definitely has been ugly. It hasn't been good. All the good reasons in the world to avoid them. But there's a little bit of upside there. It's Yankee Stadium. People aren't going to be going to it. They're very, very cheap. So I'll get some. I'm gonna try and temper my model a little bit. I expect the model's gonna get a little carried away just on some of the idea of power in that lineup. So gotta hopefully avoid that. Larry C says, "Whoa, I didn't realize Belt qualifies at outfield on DK too." Yeah, that's a huge change on the DK slate. They added outfield eligibility for Brandon Belt. That's fantastic. Now you don't have to decide between him and Vladdy in the heart of the lineup there. Belt for 2,500 on both sides. Really like him. 4 home runs on the season, over 184 plate appearances. Not completely mashing the ball, but an 11.5% barrel rate, 43.7% hard hits is very good from a guy who used to be a premium home run hitter from the left side in all those years in San Francisco. Sitting at a 167, 167 ISO, Creating runs 28% better than average for the season, over 184. Love the spot for Belt there in the heart of the lineup. Springer and Bichette and Vladdy are stars for their prices. You can go to them in much, much better matchups than this. So love the spot for all of those guys. That's obviously going to be where the popularity is. Definitely wouldn't sleep on Matt Chapman, all that premium contact. Regardless of the a little bit of a downturn after that absurd start that he had, he's maintained this level of premium contact like basically throughout the season. So I like the upside for Chapman. I think the price is right. 5,000, 2,900 at third base. Tons of value there. Merrifield gives you the stolen base upside, the hit tool upside, correlated scoring. Varsho can obviously connect for home run upside. Danny Jansen, Kevin Kiermaier, kind of mix and matchy type pieces, but Jansen at catcher, 9 home runs on the season and only 159 plate appearances, definitely gives you some upside for power. So we're going, as my favorite spot out of the 4 corners in this one would definitely be the Blue Jays lineup against Kaprelian here. And then we definitely have to reluctantly talk about Mr. Chris Bassitt. Let me pull it up the way I wrote it in the article because I went a little into the game by game for Bassitt. So I know that people don't like rostering Chris Bassitt, but over the course of time, he's been one of the more reliable options in all of fantasy baseball for depth of start. Every time out, he tries to pitch a complete game. He succeeds, he fails, whatever the case may be, but that's his goal basically every time on the mound, where a lot of other guys are looking for 5-6 clean innings and out. Bassitt wants to finish these games, so he pitches pretty deep most of the time. Looking at his game log, it gets ugly in a few spots. He's had a few disaster games. So let me look at it from the article here. In his first start of the season, we all know 9 runs in 3 1/3 innings. I think 4 home runs in that game. Then he went on a run of 8 quality starts in 9 outings. He hit a wall, gave up 7 earned runs in 4 innings. After that, 2 more quality starts, 7 2/3, and then 8 innings. And then he blew up again, giving up 8 earned on 3 home runs in 3 innings against the Orioles 2 starts ago. And then another bad start in 3 2/3 with 3 earned runs, 5 total runs, 2 Ks, 3 walks. But that was against the Rangers. This is against the Athletics. I know from time to time they can throw some bats at you and maybe Ryan Noda can knock one out of the park and Seth Brown and so on and so forth. But come on. This is the Athletics. Chris Bassitt has burnt us so many times that we're just used to it. We can just take our lumps if he fails us. I think at 9,300, at 9,200, he has to be a strong play here. 30.97 in my model, one of my top projected pitchers. I expect depth. I expect a win. I expect a quality start. I expect a handful of strikeouts. It's a spot I have to go to. As much as it might burn us, as much as we might see the Athletics hang 7 runs on him, chase him out of the game after 4 innings. That's absolutely all in play. He's got a 4.54 xFIP on the season. He's not even been as good as his 4+ ERA. He's only got a 20.6% strikeout rate, 9% swinging, 26.3% CSW, 4.02% home run rate. A lot of this came in just those 4 bad starts. So it's been really, really good, or it's been really, really bad for Chris Bassitt through this season. I think I'm going to bet on the good Bassitt in this one. Feel free to dive off the bandwagon on that play, by the way. I wouldn't blame you. The Athletics on the other side, with all those lefties in the lineup, with the idea of some Ryan Noda, maybe some Seth Brown. With the idea of some Ryan Noda and some Seth Brown, maybe I'll grab those 2 guys and bolt on some shares of like a Tony Kemp or a Blade. Langoliers, if you're playing on DK as a catcher. Connor Capel back in the lineup, 2,100, 2,000. Semi-highly regarded rookie, hit tool speed kind of a guy. Tyler Wade, a toolsy multi-position guy. 3 positions on FanDuel for Tyler Wade is kind of interesting. I should at least address that. Dead minimum price over there. He's multi-position third and shortstop on DK for 2,300. He's a toolsy guy, never really landed at the major league level. Another former Yankee prospect that wound his way out to Oakland. They've got dozens of those guys. It's like, hey, yeah, these guys are probably not going to be great major leaguers. You want them? You can have 5 of them. And the A's are like, yeah, here, take our one of our best players. That's just basically how the A's go about their business. And it never really works out well for them. Ken Waldichuk's on that list too. So anyway, Wade is an effective enough player, especially if we're looking for a dead minimum price guy to just like flex around the lineup. Even if you want to use him as a one-off at like that kind of a price, in a few lineups, don't get crazy. Don't put him in 150 lineups and build around him by any means. But I think there's value there. There's maybe even more value there than Aledmys Diaz for 21 with similar positioning. Diaz is the veteran. Diaz has done it more over time. He had a good year last year with, I think, 12 home runs. effective enough guy, similar concept, better spot in the batting order, but will probably be a little bit more popular for it. People might take their shots too on A's stacks against Bassett, in that, like, oh, I need an oddball stack, I need to be contrarian, I need to be this, I need to be that. I would expect they'll be not highly owned by any means, but in terms of those kinds of teams, I think they're going to be more highly owned than, say, the Nationals against Joe Musgrove in a similar kind of a spot. So some tepid interest in some of the lefties primarily on the A's, and then some of the mix and match parts. Good pricing, tons and tons of low end value pricing, not points per dollar premium value pricing, but bad lineup, bad players in a playable spot for very, 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 very cheap prices is what we're dealing with these A's. Bargain basement. So much more enthusiasm about the Blue Jays side on both the pitcher and the hitters. Hitters first, definitely going to get to some Chris Bassett. No real interest in Caprillion, and minor shares of A's. Moving on to the Brewers and the Guardians. We've got both lineups in this one as well. Hit the like button and the subscribe button out there, by the way, gang. Hopefully everybody watched Gundacker's show as well. Hit the like and the subscribe for him. I think we're going to get together on Monday. I think I started saying that at the top of the show and got sidetracked with some random train of thought that ran through my head as a tangent. But I intended to reach out to Gunn and set something up for today. Totally forgot. He messaged me at like 8 this morning, but I didn't see it till like 11 when I was already behind schedule. So we're going to punt that to probably Monday, or I think we agreed definitely Monday. So we'll be together on a show on Monday, probably over on his channel. Make sure you're following us both. Hit the subscribe buttons on both our channels. I think we're setting it up when we're not on together. We're staggering pretty well so that we can go from one to the other. He's typically gone first, but definitely want everybody to make sure to follow him, give him likes and all the props that he deserves, and the subscriptions and all of that. The site is rotoscouts. There's a bunch of home run picks up there. There's the power index. There's the stack rankings. There's the way too in-depth article that I read every day. All of it's free. Go check it out. Let's continue on. So I don't think anybody really wants to roster Wade Miley here. I don't think we have to spend too much time on that. Effective enough guy in terms of overtime. Can he limit run scoring and eat innings? Yes. Is he ever going to strike out a bunch of guys and give you a monster performance in terms of DFS? Probably not. We're not projecting it. We're not really seeing it in terms of the value. He's going up against a super low-end lineup that doesn't score a ton of runs against left-handed pitching, but also doesn't strike out like at all. So I don't really like either side of this in terms of Miley or the Guardians lineup, but if I was picking one, I would pick the Guardians side of it. You're probably only looking at like 5 runs, stringing together some hits, some sequencing, maybe or maybe not on the power side. For whatever he is, Miley doesn't give up a ton of home runs, so I don't really like either one of those spots. I could say, if I'm putting together Guardian stacks, it's Steven Kwan, Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez. They're all obvious names. Who's missing from the bottom? No Andres Jimenez from the bottom of the lineup. So really, it's like top 5, and then a little bit of mix and match through the bottom. If you were building, say, 10 of them, you'd want to certainly start mixing in some Tyler Freeman and Gabe Arias and everybody. But a lot of low price guys at the bottom of the lineup, but not a lot of quality in this Guardians lineup. They've really been struggling. Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor, obviously talented guys. Josh Bell is very, very cheap for what I still do believe somewhere in there is a good hitter. 40% hard hits on the season, 8.3% barrels. Those are both okay. 7 home runs on the year and 272 plate appearances, behind the curve for where we want them to be. 148 ISO, 99 WRC plus. Effective enough for those prices at first base. It's also a weird lineup with multiple first basemen in it, where you're putting the guys together. So just not the greatest lineup to go to in terms of just how it comes together, how it clicks in with other teams. You certainly don't want to have two of these first basemen instead of the other team's first baseman when you're building them with somebody else. So I just don't like this team in terms of stacking this year. The Brewers side I am kind of interested in. Going up against Biebs. This is another one of those spots. Obviously, you can see the number on the screen just like I can. 31. It's right there in line with all these other guys. 94, 96. He's priced appropriately for the struggles. I am just confused as to what we're getting out of him. I don't know what to expect here. There are strikeouts in that Brewers lineup for sure. 25% strikeouts. There's some stout hitters in that Brewers lineup. He's been feeding premium contact to hitters of both sides this year. So overall, 8% barrels, 46.5% hard hits, 91.5 miles an hour average. Exit velo, not really getting murdered on the home runs, only 2.79%. But there's a lot of premium contact there from Bieber, and there are not strikeouts. 17.5% strikeouts. That is way, way down for Shane Bieber here. So really concerned about it in terms of the long term for Biebs. I know he's working his way back from injury and trying to find himself, but we're talking about 95 innings at this point. 15 starts. It's been up and down. He's had a couple good outings. He had one a couple games ago. I was saying, hey, maybe he's found it. Maybe he's worked his way back, and then a clunker. So I don't know. I don't fully trust it. I think I want to get more into the Brewers bats here a little bit. I'll have some, but I think out of my top end projected starters, Bieber is another guy that I'll probably redirect some shares in, probably like Logan Gilbert's direction. I'll have some, but it'll be probably relative to the field. I'll probably be a little bit under. I don't know what the field's going to be at. Let's say the field is at 10. I'll have 5 or 8 or something like that. Just at least a little bit. I want to get a few bonus shares to spread out to other guys that I believe in more. And I think the Brewers are a good enough team. There's tons and tons of value in that lineup in terms of guys who can hit for power, guys who can steal a base, guys who play multiple positions. I'm looking at Luis Urias down the bottom of the lineup when I say that. I like this Brewers lineup. They haven't really done it this year. They've underperformed overall. They've had some injuries. Jesse Winker's been a massive disappointment. He's missed time with injury. He hasn't been good when he has played. But I think there's enough talent in this lineup, up and down, that I want to get to them in this spot and take my shots against the flawed version of Bieber. So it won't be one that I get carried away with. It's like a mid-range stack. But there's a lot of price-based value there, a lot of point-per-dollar-based value, a lot of decent contact profiles. 10.9% barrels. You'll like to see that from Yelich. Means his launch angle's up a little bit this year. 9 home runs on the season. Always a great hard hit rate. 55.7% this year. 117 WRC plus for him. 108 for William Contreras as a affordable catcher with a very good contact profile of his own. Handful of home runs for him. 12 homers for Tellez. 10 for Adames. 1 for Jesse Winker. And sitting at the Mendoza line. It's been bad for Jesse Winker, but at least he's 2,600, 2,300. Hitting 5th in the outfield. Maybe takes the pressure off of him if you like to chase narratives in terms of not hitting 2nd anymore with the weight of expectations on him. Just another cog in the machine hitting 5th. So maybe a little bit of upside for Winker. For sure for the price. There's a little bug flying around in here. That's a good idea. Blow into the microphone. That's what people love to hear. As somebody has their headphones blow out and jerks the wheel of their car. Anyway. So, as I was saying, the Brewers lineup. Brian Anderson, kind of a weak point in terms of the quality there, but at least an 11.6% barrel rate on the season. He hit most of those home runs in the first couple of weeks of the season, down to a 98 WRC+. Effective enough, though, for 3,100, 2,600 for a few shares. Tapia is kind of interesting in this lineup at 2,300. Moderate power. 6 stolen bases on the year. More one of those 10 home run, 20 stolen base types in a good year. Certainly not getting there so far this year, but has bounced around. He was on the Red Sox earlier in the season. Urias, I mentioned, multi-position eligible. Home run power from Luis Urias for a cheap guy at multiple positions. Last year, 16 home runs and 472. 2 years ago, 23 and 570. I can definitely book some shares of that for the price and with 3 position eligibility on FanDuel. So another one of those just bats that you can flex around to all positions. You can use them in secondary stacks. You can use them in short stacks at 3 and go to a team with their pitcher in your premium stacks. So really like that on the FanDuel slate. 2 positions from him on DK. And Joey Weimer for 27-26. For a guy with 10 home runs and 10 steals this season, his WRC plus isn't great. His triple slash is downright ugly. But the counting stats are there. It's like an Anthony Volpe kind of a play. So really cheap in the outfield. You can bolt them into a few lineups. Very nice little contact profile. 12.8% barrels, 40.5% hard hits. So for me, this one's the Brewers bats and a little bit of Shane Bieber in a weird combination. Don't really need any Wade Miley. Wouldn't be knocked out of my chair if he gave you a serviceable handful of points for 7,000 on DK. But I think it would just be like an also ran total. I don't expect him to run off and hide with any kind of score here. And then limited interest in the Guardians. Again, wouldn't shock me if somebody hits a home run. Wouldn't shock me if they hang 5 on Miley. But are they going to put 10 up? It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't project like it. They certainly haven't been doing it all season. I don't think the Guardians really get there. So this is a team I want to talk about. The Red Sox are projecting well in my model. They were one of the higher ranked teams in terms of the overall projections. They were one of the higher ranked teams in terms of value. It was when we had Jarren Duran in the leadoff spot We still got Verdugo on the bereavement list, as somebody mentioned to us yesterday. But Rob Refsnyder, bit of a downgrade in my opinion compared to Jarren Duran, particularly with a righty on the mound. If it was a lefty, I could see Refsnyder leading off. I don't love that spot, but at least he's only 2,800. You can skip him and get him out of the way and just start with Turner, Yoshida, Devers, Duvall, and Connor Wong. It's basically those 6 guys, a smattering of Refsnyder, some Christian Arroyo, some Enrique Hernandez, just like bolt-on pieces, and then the dead minimum of David Hamilton down there. It's not great. It probably doesn't stand out as much as it was a little bit earlier when I liked Duran and gave you an extra hitter in this lineup up top. Refsnyder could do something here. He's cheap enough. 277, 416, 376, but he's mostly there for platoon play against lefties, and he's really just a replacement level player, a utility man over the course of time, quad A type player, whatever you want to call it. Not a premium bat. So maybe I temper my expectations a little bit from the Red Sox, but I do still like this core of the Turner through here. I like Wong for all his premium contact as a cheap catcher at 2,900 on the DK slate. I think you can play him at 26 on FanDuel, 6 home runs on the season and 181 plate appearances. Obviously, Adam Duvall, we know, has premium power when he's going right. He's only made 80 plate appearances this season, has 5 home runs already this year. Most of them came early in the season before the injury, but 300, 388, 643 overall. It's not like he's been bad since he's been back. Devers has been down in terms of the triple slash. It's got his price down a little bit, but the power's there. Yoshida's been great. Turner's been on fire and just is very, very good overall and is cheap and fills multiple positions on FanDuel. So 2 through 6, I like the Red Sox. Bolt-on parts on the other sides of it. Going up against Giolito here, they're projecting well, like I said. It's going up against a pitcher who really has kind of turned into a slightly better than league average pitcher in terms of his strikeout upside, around the average in terms of the xFIP ERA, maybe a little bit better than average in terms of where the ERA tends to land. But Giolito hasn't been an ace caliber pitcher. He's priced high, 9,600, 10,000. I'll have some, but you can see there's like a 5-6 point offset between where his projection lands and where the other guys land. So he'll probably be down my board a little bit against what I think is a good offense. Decent amount of guys that limit strikeouts, can draw some walks here. So Giolito, overall, a lot of premium contact allowed. 41.3% hard hits on a high launch angle, 9.9% barrels. If this exit velo was a mile an hour higher, he'd have a bigger problem here. He's been managing to avoid super premium contact by a little bit, but the 3.58% home runs is targetable with this Red Sox lineup. The run creation marks are targetable. The strikeouts are tolerable with a team that's not filthy for strikeouts for their power hitters, for the core guys that I want to get to. Right? Yoshida, 10.8. Justin Turner, 14.7. Refsnyder, I don't really care about. Slap hitter type guy, but at least knows how to get on base. And then Devers, for all his struggles, still only 21.2% strikeouts. So it's not really filthy for strikeouts for Giolito here. So minor shares of Giolito, I think, for me in this matchup. I think there's just better spots to get to. Another guy that wouldn't surprise me if he won the slate. Could certainly put up a good score. Could come out and rack up 10 strikeouts against this lineup. It wouldn't shock me if he did that. We've seen Giolito have great games like that before. But it's not really projecting great. The price is high against this team. So I'm kind of more interested in Red Sox bats than Giolito shares. I am not that interested in White Sox bats against Brian Bayo here. I think I will have some shares of Bayo for the value pricing. He projects a little bit lower than Giolito does, but he's priced a lot lower, 8,400, 8,700. I think those are effective prices for a guy who, one thing he does very, very well is cut home runs. 5.93 in the home run model for Luis Robert, 5.05 for Eloy Jimenez. Those are low marks for those guys. Those are guys that are typically 10 plus or thereabouts. So we're basically getting half the home run upside from the White Sox that we normally would. If he gave up one, he gave up one, he made a mistake, but he's not a guy who over time has been filthy for home runs in any kind of a way. He cuts launch angle very, very well. 4.6 degrees this year, 5.3 degrees last year. Last year, an outstanding 0.37% home runs. I would guess that based on remembering what Sonny Gray's number is similar to that in a similar sample this year, I would guess that's one home run last year. I didn't look it up, but that's probably one home run in 57 and a third and 11 starts last year. This year, 2.72% home runs, has made a few more mistakes, but keeping the ball down equally effectively. 22.2% strikeouts. That's up year over year by two points. Cut the walks from 10.1 to 7.8. and a growing sample. 59 and a third innings. This is an equal sample to last year, so he's improving. So I like the spot for Bayo at price. The White Sox haven't been very good this year. He's going to cut their power. I don't need to go to a lot of White Sox stacks here. I do like Luis Robert. I like the fact that Timmy Anderson's probably back in the lineup finally after his, I think it was a shoulder that was bothering him. Andrew Benintendi, though, and Timmy Anderson have both underperformed at the top of the lineup. Jimenez has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. He's fantastic when he's in there, but he's been in and out, so the numbers aren't great. But if you're going to White Sox, it's 1 through 4. Bolt on some shares of Andrew Vaughn, maybe some Jake Berger, some Gavin Sheets down the bottom of the lineup. Certainly good hitters that I like to get to, but I just don't love targeting these ground ball specialists. I don't love targeting these guys who are very effective at limiting home run power, limiting launch angle. So not a great spot in my mind for the White Sox. Lower priority stack. Some names I like, some prices that are fine on those names that I like, but I think I'm more interested in the Bayo side. So less interest in White Sox across the board, more interest in Red Sox across the board. I'll have some White Sox, more Giolito than their bats. So it's probably like a Red Sox, Bayo, Giolito, White Sox kind of a spot for me. A little bit of all four sides for sure, though. Handful of games to go. We just got to Coors Field. So just forget everything I said and build your lineups with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani at Coors Field and go win some money, right? That's basically what's going to happen tonight. I got to this point. That's exactly how I wrote it in the article, because I got to this point and I was just like, fuck. Like, it's just, I imagine I didn't look at any ownership percentages. What do they own? 30-ish% on a 10-gamer? Probably somewhere thereabouts. I would expect Taylor Ward to be in the high 20s. Brandon Drury, Hunter Renfroe to be in the high 20s. Padlo, Wallach, Renifo. No Timmy Anderson for the White Sox again? Yeah, that's a bummer. I really like Tim Anderson. Excellent player. Has had a down season this year, but that is not a good version of the White Sox lineup. Bump to Bayo. Let me put this in here real quick. That's worth going back for. Thanks for pointing that out, Larry. That is worth going back to real quick. Where do we have time-wise? It's only 5:15. We got plenty of time. We're only an hour in. Plenty of time. I think we only got, 4 games left to talk about. One of them's this Coors Field game. So let's hop back in time a half second here. This is a bump to Bayo in my mind. No Tim Anderson. Vaughn hitting second. Vaughn's a good hitter. And that's a good spot for him. So 3,200, 2,700. It's a bump to Andrew Vaughn in terms of what he would project at. But it's a better bump to Brian Bayo, I think, with this version of the White Sox lineup. Sheets 5, Berger 6, then Elvis Andrus 7, Remillard, Zavala. That's a pretty weak bottom third. If he can get through this, if he can get through that a couple times over, that's a pretty good spot for Brian Bayo. Not a huge bump. I'm not saying, drop him into 100 lineups or anything, but at price, there's upside for that pitcher here now. Good handful of ground balls from these guys. Find me a couple strikeouts against some of these guys. All right, I think we've got some upside here, so I think I'll take some shots with Bayo. Not a good version of the White Sox lineup at all. %15.9%, that's it? On Ohtani on DK? Wow. That's surprising. All right. In that case, I mean, I know he's 6,700, 5,000 on FanDuel, but damn, that might be worth getting invested in. Is that the first 5,000 price on FanDuel this year? They haven't been that aggressive in terms of the high fours. I don't remember seeing another 5. 67, 65 for Trout and Ohtani is expensive, but 44, 5,000, 45 for Taylor Ward, Brandon Drury, and Hunter Renfroe is cheap. So I think that offsets. I think that averages down to normal pricing. On the FanDuel slate, same thing. Those guys, those other 3 guys are more mid-average high prices. But I think it averages them down enough that you can certainly go there. If they're that low owned, I'm kind of interested. I was expecting to say undercut because of popularity and come in around 15%. But if they're at 15, I could push a little bit above that, or at least be around the field. 12.5 on FanDuel. No shit. Interesting. I know it's a big slate. There's a lot of spots, like I said. So I guess that just must mean that the Blue Jays and the Pods are drawing some ownership as well, I guess. And it's just kind of all balanced out instead of the Angels drawing it. That's interesting. I'm kind of surprised by that. So, look, opportunities abound going up against Kyle Freeland in Coors Field here. If you're a Coors Field inclined player, that's good news that they're projecting in that kind of range for ownership. I was expecting more. It's definitely an expensive play, but you can absolutely get there. There is a ton of hitting value. There are several cheapish pitchers on the slate that are usable. So, yeah, I guess fire away with Angels. We'll see what version of the lineup we get. I think it would be interesting even against the lefty if you had like Mickey Moniak in the lineup, maybe hitting, maybe you drop him in down lineup somewhere like where Padlo is or something like that and give the kid a shot here. I wouldn't expect him to lead off against the lefty, but maybe they drop Moniak in there. Maybe it gets interesting. Wallach is a playable catcher. Love the contact profile, 14.3% barrels, 6 home runs in 92 plate appearances. Renifo is a guy we've talked about a bunch of times for value, flexible positioning for cheap prices, never very popular. 17 home runs last year. Has been coming on a little bit. He produced a couple of games of value in the recent games, so maybe we get a little bit more out of him in Coors Field. A lot of multi-position guys in that lineup, a lot of cheap prices. They're affordable, especially if you go to the bottom of the lineup there. Like, say you're trying to afford Trout and Ohtani on DK, so grab me a Chad Wallach as a catcher for $2,800. Grab me a Renifo at $2,900. Slot him in at second base. Put Drury at first. Ohtani and Trout in the outfield. We're off and running. That's an affordable stack. That's easy. Other side of this one, the Rockies, not projecting great. Like, they're in the mid-range in terms of my overall projections. Coors Field, giving them a 5+ run total for sure. There's definite upside there, but I kind of respect Patrick Sandoval. Another guy who is very good at limiting launch angle, keeping the ball down, limiting home run upside. You can see 1.60 in the home runs this year, 6.1 degree average launch angle, 6.6% on the barrels. Not the most effective pitcher in terms of strikeouts, in terms of, shutting teams down over extreme lengths of time, but he's an effective enough major league starter and experienced lefty that I don't expect a huge game from the Rockies here. That doesn't lead me to rush to put in shares of Sandoval, especially on FanDuel. 8,200, that's just silly. 68, if you're inclined to, if you're a risk taker who likes to gamble on, mid-range, mediocre type pitchers at Coors Field, I tend to only use Coors pitchers when I can get like a Kershaw or somebody like that and take my shot with an ace that nobody goes to. I don't really put Sandoval in that category, but he's very cheap. If he gave you 6 clean and a win and a handful of strikeouts, it wouldn't completely surprise me for price. So value-wise for a few shares, I mean, you're deciding whether or not you want to tangle with Coors, but at least you get a terrible lineup to do it with. Profar and Tovar are a waste of time up at the top of the lineup. Tovar will probably develop into a better player. 256, 292, 412. He's got a ways to go. 75 WRC plus. Ways to go. He doesn't want to keep looking as much like Profar at the top of the lineup as he is. 72 WRC plus for Profar, 75 for Tovar. Both have Tovar. See? They're merging into the same guy. 32 runs each. Starting to look like the same dude up there. 34.3% hard hits for Profar. 33.3% hard hits for Tovar. This is difficult to talk about. I'm not going to keep on saying it. McMahon, Elias Diaz, Randall Grichuk, Nolan Jones. Nolan Jones did wind up in the lineup. Good. He wasn't in that projected lineup that I used. He's obviously been raking 4,100, 4,000. So I like this lineup a little bit better with Jones in it. Elevators Montero, Brenton Doyle from the bottom of the lineup, two young players that you can keep your eye on. Certainly you can grab cheap shares of. So a little bit of a bump given that Nolan Jones is in the lineup. Even lefty-lefty, I don't really care about that right now, especially not at Coors Field. So little minor bump to the Rockies. I like the Rockies from 3. You can include Tovar, I guess. But really, realistically for me, if I was building one share of Rockies, it would be from like 3 through 7. I would take my choices of hitters from that and maybe some Brenton Doyle at the bottom. Maybe you wrap Doyle around to the top of the lineup, but I don't love the Provar Tovar part of the top of the lineup, as we've probably firmly established. Angels lineup's out. Not on Schmebs yet. Anything weird in it? In that Angels lineup there? Could be Travis says, Terry with an I. If you spell my name with an I insist you dot it with a little heart. That's my one stipulation. If the Angel stacks are 18% owned on DraftKings, is that a number you would be over or under to on 5-man stacks? I don't love to look at it in terms of just the pure this team at this popularity number. I know there's, leverage considerations there for sure, but it also very much depends on what you're putting them together with. If you're differentiating your second spots there, you can gain leverage by differentiating your second spot. You can differentiate with pitchers and gain leverage. So there's a lot of ways to gain leverage on the field rather than just looking at it as a pure over-under with that team number. based on what we were just talking about with some of the lower popularity on some of those players, the individuals in that lineup in the projected ownership numbers, which I don't know, still feel low to me. I'd be comfortable rostering them, at or about the field. And I'm kind of debating if those numbers hold as we get toward lock. I'm kind of debating pushing a little bit more. It's a spot I really, really like. You're talking about some of the best players in the league against a mediocre type pitcher who allows a ton of contact. Like, look at the numbers for Freeland. They're right there at the bottom of the screen. 14.9% strikeouts, a 4.84%, 4.84 xFIP, 4.48 ERA, plenty of hard contact, plenty of barrels, home runs. That just speaks to upside for that lineup. Let's see. We got so Ward, Ohtani, Trout, Drury, Renfroe, Padlo, Renifo, Wallach, Velasquez. So basically exactly what we thought. Yeah. I think you can get to Angels. I wouldn't mind if that's the 18% number. I think you can go right there, with the field. I'm enthusiastic about the spot. On the idea of a large 10-game slate, like that's typically not how I approach Coors Field. I would typically be looking to spread shares, and I do like the spot for the Red Sox. I do like the spot for the Blue Jays. I do like the spot for the Padres. But what that tells me is that those spots are going to be somewhat equally owned. So if I'm spreading out to spots that are similarly owned to the spot that I'm avoiding or getting away from, it doesn't pay off as much, right? I'm not getting to the under-owned spot. I suspect the Red Sox will still be the more under-owned spot out of those going up against Giolito. But yeah, I think we can go to some Angels here. As surprised as I am to be saying that. Obviously a good spot, but I was expecting to say that I would want to undercut the field a little bit here. And still might end up doing so. We'll see how it all comes out in the wash. They're very high priced, so it'll depend on how they come out in combinations in my optimizer runs and all of that. This chat likes Kyle Freeland. Oh, Dan, I think you might be out on a limb on that one, buddy. Does not project well for me. Good luck. 5,000. Hey, you're getting him for a cheap hitter price. I suspect that Dennis is kidding about that one. If you haven't noticed, he is a frequent user of what we like to call sarcasm. Washington Nationals, San Diego Padres. Lead has been firmly buried on Joe Musgrove all show. Touched on him real quick up at the top, but he checks in at 8,800, 8,900. That is a discount for a talented pitcher. He's not an ace, or he is an ace, for them, kind of, or Darvish, I guess, is their ace, however you want to look at it. He's over the last few years, next tier down, if the Ohtanis and the Garrett Coles and so on of the world are ones, then he's a 2, in my mind. So I like Joe Musgrove in this spot. I just think he's going to be really popular. I imagine he's still projecting for a lot of ownership around the industry. I know RG's number on him had him as the one of the most highly owned pitchers on the day. I suspect Stochastic probably does as well. I think it makes a ton of sense just based on the pitcher you're getting, the matchup that you're getting at price, pitcher's park, ton of upside for the win. I think there's plenty of reason to go to Joe Musgrove. I'm going to have a lot of them, even if he's popular, especially if I can get to a lot of less than I thought popularity on some of those premium bats. I think there's even more reason to go to Musgrove because he helps pay for a lot of that. That's also why we're going to get so much popularity on him comparative to the other premium pitchers on the slate. He's also an excellent matchup. So a lot of good reason to go to Musgrove. There is a limitation in terms of the strikeout rate that the Nationals put up. So one thing they do well is avoid the strikeouts. I think it was 18 and something, second best in baseball against right-handed pitching this year. So we're watching out for that. That's not in any way leading me toward National stacks. It's a team I don't like going to. I'll go to them from time to time against the lefty. We didn't quite get there against the lefty. We got a few decent plate appearances. Home run from somebody the other day against the lefty. The kid we talked about, Riley Adams, on the show, who's so good against lefties. So we got that out of him the other day. But if I'm not targeting a lefty and if I'm got a good pitcher that I like a lot on the other side, I don't think I need to go to any real shares of Nationals. It's an interesting spot. I expect they'll draw less ownership than the A's, like we talked about before against whoever that was, that I was saying would probably draw more ownership than this spot. So like if you're looking for that contrarian play, maybe you do make it with the Nationals just at lower ownership, and attacking a giant chunk of the field, I would imagine, with Joe Musgrove here. 35% DK for Musgrove, Chuck Deuces says. Yeah, that's a big meaty chunk of the field. It's just a terrible lineup to do that with. But at least you get Candelario in the lineup, 8 home runs, all of which came against right-handed pitching this year. He's better for power, better for upside against righties. Thomas is perfectly capable against righties. 12 homers overall on the season. He's their one good player right now. Joey Meneses hits for average this season, but no power to speak of. Dickerson, decent lefty veteran power bat from the left side. Decent lefty veteran power bat from the left side. Well said, Tar. 2,200 on the left side, 2,300 on FanDuel. Decent power bat there. Keibert Ruiz, decent little stick as a young catcher. We'll see how the lineup comes out. Maybe 1 through 6, a few shares. You grab some Nationals here against Musgrove, but not a lot. Certainly not one to get carried away with. And I'll have a lot of Musgrove, but I'll probably be under the field, especially on DK. I think there's other spots to spread around to if the field's that enthusiastic about him on that slate. But he is at the right price. Nobody really compares price-wise, and we'll take a look at that when we look at the board in a minute. There's a bunch of like 9s and higher. There's a bunch of like 7s and lower. Musgrove's the only guy that works as like an SP1 in that 8,800 range on DK. So he's a bit of a difficult pivot there. Where like on FanDuel, like I said, for 100 more, I get Gilbert at like no ownership, who projects similarly. So a lot of Musgrove, but probably under the field. Not a lot of interest in the Nationals bats, but I think you could plant a flag there and make a stand against a lot of the field if you wanted to with a bad team, knowing that you're doing it with a bad team, searching for some contact maybe. And then we get to the Padres and all those home runs that they're projecting for here against Mr. Patrick Corbin. Corbin, one of the bigger targets on the in the league over the last few years. I don't think I'm surprising anybody by saying that I will have a lot of Padres here going up against Corbin. I've mentioned them a few times through the show. 14.1% strikeouts for Corbin, 3.40% home runs, 91.4 miles an hour of exit velocity, 46% hard hits. If the ball goes in the air, it's a decent shot at a home run here. We've got all this power with Tatis, Soto, Machado, and Bogarts, who are both struggling, but are very, very cheap for it on both sites. Both of those guys are way, way down in price. More starkly on FanDuel at $29,000 and $3,000, but the low 5s on DK is a very affordable price for those two hitters. Gary Sanchez, my overall home run pick for the day, 11. It's an 11.11. I couldn't resist it. And I love Gary. Everybody knows I love Gary Sanchez. So 7 home runs on the season, 82 plate appearances. You get what you get from Gary. We all know that. 13.2% barrels, 45.3% hard hits. I will definitely take some shares of Gary. Cronenworth, Nelson Cruz, Ha-Seong Kim, Trent Grisham. Watch how it comes out. You may or may not get Nelson down the bottom of the lineup there. Cronenworth's a playable part who's underperformed so far this year. Same story with Trent Grisham. Ha-Seong Kim gives you some counting stats: 6 homers, 13 stolen bases, 104 WRC plus. Cheap guy, multi-position on FanDuel. So I don't hate Kim. The OMG father says 7 homers. I know, 7 homers for Gary. And a 29.3% strikeout rate. I think that was over 30 yesterday. He hit his 7th homer yesterday. 303 ISO. It's Gary. It's who he's always been. If he makes contact, the ball flies off the bat. He doesn't make a ton of contact. He strikes out way too much. He's not a good defensive catcher, which is weird because I remember when he first came up with the Yanks, he had this cannon for an arm, and he whipped the ball down to first base and pick a couple guys off after a pitch. It was really, really good that first year. Not necessarily like framing or blocking or anything like that, but just really good in terms of the arm. And even that went away in subsequent years. And then he started to hear things and get those tourist asshole Yankee fans that are now booing Josh Donaldson, who deserves a lot of boos, let's be honest. But booed Aaron Hicks out of town, booed my guy Joey Gallo out of town. Those are not actual Yankees fans. Those are tourists masquerading as Yankee fans, thinking that that's what they're supposed to do in Yankee Stadium, and they chase these players out. But Gary was one of those guys, unfortunately. It's cost us a few good bats. I love me some Gary Sanchez, always will. Unapologetically. Let's move on from this one. So lots of interest in Joe Musgrove, lots of interest in the Pods, no real interest in Patrick Corbin. I think I would call you crazy if you told me you were rostering Patrick Corbin in this situation. Even 6,100. Normally I say I wouldn't call you completely crazy. It's pushing it. That is pushing it. You're not getting strikeouts. If he was striking out even 1 in 5, I could give it to you. But yeah, you're doing it on the memory of this guy being a good pitcher years and years ago at this point. I don't see a spot for Corbin there. Minor interest in Nationals bats. 2 games to go. Another semi-interesting spot in terms of the pitchers. JP France, 7,400, 8,800, has been moderately effective. Another guy like league average-ish right now in terms of the production. I think upside for more as he grows as a pitcher. Rookie starter, 47 1/3, 8 starts, 19.3% strikeouts, a few too many walks, but not tragically so. Single-digit walks at least, 8.1% is fine. 4.06% home runs, there's your problem. right? But it's not really on like a massive hard hit rate. He's just giving up a few too many barrels. To me, that suggests a few mistakes rather than somebody who just is lousy for contact. So I think this normalizes. It's only 8 starts. That probably normalizes over time. We'll see. But the strikeouts at 1 and 5 is probably about right for who he is right now. A 4.45 xFIP under a 3.42 ERA. This is probably the more honest number. All of this is to say probably don't play this kid against the Dodgers. Don't really see the reason to. 74 is an okay price for him. He should probably be cheaper on DK in the 6s against this team. 88 on FanDuel I feel like is too much. It would surprise me if he put up a quality start, got the winning score on the FanDuel slate against this team. These Dodgers are just too good, so that's not really a spot for me. I think Emmett Sheehan against this Astros team, though, maybe a little bit of value there. Made 1 start, 6 innings pitched, only a couple of strikeouts, couple of walks, 0 ERA. He's shut out whoever it was over 6 innings. That's in the article as well. I can scroll down to it. That was against the Giants on the 16th, just a few days ago. 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, 6 innings, shutout ball, 6,500, 8,400. I'm not going to say that he's going to go out and shut out the Astros over 6 innings and book you a quality start for sure, but on the idea that he could give you 6 innings of, only a couple of runs, maybe he finds a few more strikeouts against the Astros here. It's not a great matchup, but they haven't been anywhere near the Astros of old. So I'm not that worried about him. He's a fairly highly regarded kid. He was ridiculous earlier in the year in Double-A. Let me show you the Double-A numbers real quick. Double-A this year leapt from Double-A straight to the show when they gave him the promotion. 53 and a third, and again, this is Double-A, but there's some more advanced hitting in Double-A. 53 and a third innings, 10 starts, 12 appearances, a 1.86 ERA, a 3.20 xFIP, which shows you, he's capable of giving up some runs, but a 41.7% strikeout rate. That's what I'm looking for. So I think the number we got for strikeouts in the first game is, kind of an anomaly as he just gets his feet wet at the major league level. There's upside for him to find a few more strikeouts. At price on DK at 65, I think there's enough value there to take a few shots. It doesn't really come through in the model. He projects for an okay score, but not like a premium high-end score. But I think he books a few strikeouts probably beyond what the model's giving him here and could potentially pay off that DK price on a good day. 84, you're probably taking a big risk there on the FanDuel slate. Getting to that quality start for that price, probably in question for the young kid. He's got a chance. They gave him 6 innings in the first start. There's no reason he wouldn't if he's pitching better in this start. But it's thin. It's thinner on the FanDuel slate with a lot of options to go. For only, 500 more you get to Joe Musgrove, 600 more you get to Logan Gilbert. That gets a little dicey, a little thin. Maybe take a few shots. Astros bats, you can throw some bats at this kid. Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, Jainer Diaz. That's basically where I'm living if I'm stacking Astros, is just in that quality top half. Bregman has been down a little bit for the season, but 10 home runs on the year. An effective veteran bat that I still believe will make the turn for the season. He's cheap, 4,500, 3,200. Kyle Tucker, monster upside, 9 home runs, 14 stolen bases. Also underperforming the season, but he's also cheap for it, 5,235. Good prices for Tucker. Diaz has been terrific. 7 home runs, a 244 ISO in 127 plate appearances. 15% barrel rate, 48% hard hits, was the backup catcher who was like playing from time to time the bottom of the lineup and has kind of forced his way in here full time. So assuming he's in the lineup, especially if he's hitting cleanup like he's projected here, love that spot. So you can go top 4 there, and then you can bolt on some Jose Abreu, some Jeremy Pena, some Jolks. Hopefully you get Chas McCormick in the lineup. I think he hit another home run yesterday. I like Chas McCormick. I would play him over Corey Jolks. I'd play him over Jake Myers. We'll see what we get. You mix and match your way through the bottom of the Astros lineup. There's definitely some value there. Throwing, especially the idea of just, I'll grab, if I have some Sheehan, or even if I don't, I'll grab some Altuve, Bregman, Tucker at the very least against a rookie pitcher in his second ever start. I think there's definite upside there too. So that's a both-sided situation for me. Dodgers bats are the same thing. Less interest in going to France, like I said, but I think I want to grab some Dodgers bats going against him here, especially with all this premium contact he's allowed so far, especially with the limitation on strikeouts, a little bit of an elevated walk rate. Plenty of value in going to Mookie, Freddie, Will Smith, Max Muncy back in the lineup for 5,000, 3,400. Premium home run hitter. Maybe goes a little bit under the radar if he plays. 18 home runs on the season at 282 ISO. Just like with Schwarber, we don't care about the sub-Mendoza average with him. We just stick him in the lineup for home runs, and we're thankful when he hits them. JD, mashing the ball this season, 17.9% barrels, 53.8% hard hits. I continue to be amazed by JD Martinez's monster bounce back this year. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting quality, like I said. Handful of home runs, I was expecting like this to be his home run total for the end of the season. 16. 16 with like a 170-something ISO. Decent little story on a successful Los Angeles team. I was not expecting anything like this. I'm happy for him. Vargas, Outman, Rojas down the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match type guys. All right, so that was a little bit of Sheehan for value. Probably some Astros, probably some Dodgers. Less interest in France. Wouldn't totally surprise me. Well, no, I said it would totally surprise me because it's the Dodgers. That's right. The price is okay for what this kid has done so far and who he's probably going to be. It's just the matchup that I don't really like there. I think there's just better directions to go. Last game on deck. This is an interesting one. This is a important game in the National League West. These guys are only playing a few more times. Mad Dog was talking about it. I left the MLB network on earlier into Chris Russo's show. Haven't heard the Mad Dog for a minute. I grew up with Mike and the Mad Dog here in the Jersey area. I'm sure some people in the chat know who I'm talking about. Some probably don't. They're famous guys, though. But I was listening to the dog. He's a famous Giants fan, so he was ranting for a little bit about the importance of this series for the Giants. It's an interesting spot for DFS. Really productive Diamondbacks lineup that doesn't strike out a lot, going up against Logan Webb. I feel like Webb's maybe a little high priced here, just for the matchup, for the lack of strikeout upside. He's having a very, very nice season. I could see him posting a good score here, and I think maybe the price keeps the ownership off. I'm not sure where they've got him owned. If you guys want to drop it in the chat, feel free. But I expect he's going to be lower owned than a lot of those other pitchers we talked about, going up against a very tough Diamondbacks lineup, like I said, that doesn't strike out a lot. But he's another guy really, really good at capping power. Look at all those low home run marks. Christian Walker at 4.24. Lourdes Gurriel, 2.75. Corbin Carroll, 2.81. Those are low home run marks. Arizona lineups in. Longo's in. All right. Let me grab it. I thought I grabbed that one earlier. Didn't we have the time? Whatever. Put it in. It's obviously not there right now. So Longo's interesting. Like him better against lefties at this point in his career, but I'll always take shots with Longo. He's a effective guy at this point in his career, and he's only 2,800, 2,900 across sites. So Perdomo, Marte, Carroll, Walker, Gurriel. Thomas hitting sixth. That's interesting. Thomas hitting sixth. No Emmanuel Rivera. That's the one guy that comes out of the lineup, who I did like. I liked that spot with Rivera sixth. I gave you a solid 1 through 6. Kid was having a really good year with the hit tool, wasn't striking out. Thomas is a different player there. A lot of value in the 2,400 price. Mid-range power and good speed kind of a guy, similar to what Jake McCarthy gives you in the 9 spot down there. McCarthy a little bit more speed on display so far this season, 15 stolen bases and 160. Thomas only 3 and 140. Both of them, 3 home runs for Thomas, 2 for McCarthy. So I like Longo there. You can see the premium contact. Again, it's mostly against lefties. He's been largely platooning this year. But that's premium contact, 14.1% barrels, 56.4% hard hits. He still strikes the ball very, very well when he makes contact. 9 homers and 124 plate appearances. Wrong side of the platoon. And against Logan Webb, who, like I was saying before, to jump back to Webb, another guy, really limits launch angle. Sustained trait over time. 2.8 degrees this year, 3.1 degrees last year, negative 0.5 the year before, 1.51% home run rate going back to 2021, 1.4 last year, 3.06 this year is up, but this is happenstance. This is a couple of mistakes to the wrong guy, and the ball went over the wall. This is who this guy is in terms of the contact, in terms of the home runs allowed. His strikeouts are up a little bit this year, 24.5%. Not quite as high as 2 years ago, but definitely better than last year. Walks are down. xFIP is good. There's a lot to like about Logan Webb. I just don't love the fact that all those guys at the top of the Diamondbacks lineup strike out below 20%. That's a good run of hitters. There's a lot of good hitters there. There's a lot of on-base skill there. With all those on-base percentages, there's a good amount of power through those guys. So, dangerous spot with kind of a ceiling on it, I think, for Logan Webb. The price is high for the opportunity. you have to factor in the idea that the price would cut down the ownership, I think, to get there with this Webb play. I think it's on the board because of that, but it's lower end to me than, like, say, the Gilbert play for a little bit less. They project fairly similarly. I will have some Webb, but I think I'm more enthused about the Gilbert opportunity. Just on the idea of a higher strikeout ceiling. Probably a not more dangerous lineup, but given Webb's talent is in limiting home runs, he might be in a less dangerous spot just because of who he is, if that makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out through the models. If he's super low owned, like, low single digits, I might press a few additional shares just based on how good he is. But I think the ceiling is somewhat capped against this Diamondbacks team, and they could string together some sequencing, could string together some big hits, and definitely bend to score against them. So I'll have a little bit of Diamondbacks on the other side, but definitely not as much as I've had in recent games. I think he caps their upside as much as they might cap his in terms of the strikeouts, in terms of what he does taking the home runs away. I do think you can grab some Giants bats against Zach Davies. That's a good news to end the show. Davies is not good, serviceable, like innings eater-ish type right-handed starter, but not anybody you would ever call good. 5.78 ERA, a 5.03 xFIP 2 years ago with 17.1% strikeouts in 32 starts, full season, 148 innings. Give up plenty of premium contact, plenty of home runs. Last year, 27 starts, 134 innings, 4.09 ERA, 4.58 xFIP. Target rule for power upside. This year, 2.01% home run rate, 4.7% barrels. This will probably trend back more toward these numbers. The hard hits will probably go up. Exit velo is already high. So even though guys aren't hitting the ball on the ideal angle for home runs, they're smoking the ball when they make contact off of them. So I expect the home runs will go up. The ERA is already atrocious at 7.11. The xFIP is 4.78. He walks too many, especially for how few he strikes out. So I think there's plenty of upside for the Giants here. You could run into a weird version of the Giants lineup. You could run into a mix and match if they, chase Davies early and they start getting into the bullpen situation. But I haven't been as worried about that. It certainly cost us with the Twins the other day because they get really aggressive about it, taking guys out before they've made a plate appearance after an opener goes. We were wondering about that in the Discord earlier today. Discord's free, by the way. Join the Discord, hit the like, hit the subscribe, etc., etc. I'm so bad at the plugs. So, yeah, I think we can go to the Giants. If we get this version of the lineup especially, love Lamont Wade off the top. Disrespected player in terms of where he's owned and priced by the DFS industry, basically game after game. A 415 on base, creating runs 47% better than average. 9 home runs on the season. 280, 415, 463, 42.4% hard hits. He only costs $4,500, $3,100. I would imagine he's not that popular. Tyro Estrada, Jock Peterson, J.D. Davis, Michael Conforto. Really like that stretch of hitters. Estrada is like his own animal in terms of good hit tool, good power, good speed. 9 home runs, 17 stolen bases on the season. Creating runs 17% better than average. And then you get the lefty-righty-lefty run of power. JD's got a better hit tool than the other two guys right now. None of them is terrible for hit tool. Peterson at 266. Conforto's been better in the past with his hits. Right now he's kind of just a power or nothing kind of a guy. But there's a ton of lefty power in Conforto and Peterson. Good right-handed bat in JD. All at fair prices going up against this pitcher. So I like that part of the lineup quite a bit. You get Matos for a cheap price. Hit tool and speed kind of a guy. Defense kind of a guy. But a kid who they believe in and they believe has the bat to justify like a center field role going forward. So good defense, good speed, reasonable hit tool, playable part for cheap pricing. Patrick Bailey's been a productive catcher. Over 95 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 318, 344, 523, 205 ISO. Kind of filling in that role for the Giants here. Crawford and Bryce Johnson from the bottom of the lineup. Take him or leave him. Bryce Johnson's dead minimum priced if he plays. That's effective enough for a few shares at the bottom of the lineup. Crawford, some left-handed veteran power at shortstop, 4 home runs on the season. It hasn't been good in a long time, but there's game to game, any given slate home run power there at the very least. That brings us around to the end of the show. Could be Travis says, I know Mad Dog from First Take with Stephen A. Smith. Yep, that's another spot you would know Mad Dog from for sure. Yeah, Larry, I mean, grew up with Chris Mad Dog Russo in my ear. I've talked about it on shows before, just the old WFAN crowd here in the New York area, and they were syndicated in a lot of areas around the country too. But it was a pleasure growing up with those guys as a sports fan for years. My favorite overall, Larry might know this name, is I've talked about it on shows also, is Steve Summers, the old overnight guy. Steve Summers, me here and you there. An all-night schmooze here on the Fan. I can't do him, but I didn't do him any justice there. But he was my guy. Talked to him a few times on long road trips home after like visiting somebody at college. I'd be driving through New York on my way back to the schmooze, exactly. I'd be driving back to college and, from like Rhode Island to Boston or something. And he'd be on at 2 a.m. and just to stay awake, I'd give him a call and sit on hold listening for, a half hour before he picked up. And then I'd ask him a question about the Rangers or whatever. Pete Franklin. Yep, for sure. Good stuff. Lars Mamba says, great show. Can you let me know who the SP2 of the slate is? I'm locking Bayo in. I like the Bayo spot there. Let's scroll over. We were just about to do that and talk about the old pitching slate here. So top to bottom on the pitchers. Center it a little bit more. So like I said, Musgrove and Gilbert up at the top of my board here. Uncomfortably high projection on Musgrove, but I think it's justified against that team. Even with a lack of strikeouts, that's probably pushing a few too many strikeouts in his direction. They're good at limiting the strikeouts, but I think he's got a good shot at posting the top score for price, for even at popularity. I think he makes a ton of sense. Gilbert I really like. I think he's going to be under-owned in that spot. Baltimore could certainly get to him. He could have another clunker. He's had a few in a row, but I really like the pitcher. I believe in him. He's a control command specialist. Doesn't typically get himself in trouble. Chuck makes a good point that there's also potential weather in that spot, so we got to watch out for that as you're building lineups. Keep an eye on the weather. We've got an hour and change to deal with it. That's another spot where on FanDuel, with the ability to swap out after a game gets PPD, I worry about it a little less. I just worry about the start, then postponement. That's where you're running into a problem. So if we get the delayed start, I'm less worried about it. Bieber up at the top, another guy struggling. Don't totally believe it, but that's who we're dealing with on all of these guys. Oops. So Biebs is in that situation. Bassett's in that situation. Senga's in that situation. Musgrove's in that situation. Gilbert is arguably in that situation. Giolito's in that situation. Everybody on the board is kind of questionable like that. Webb is in a questionable strikeout upside spot. It's easy to say that Webb might be the best pitcher on this slate right now and just the easy guy to go to. Chuck says he likes Bieber. Yeah, I don't dislike him. Where he's projected, I will have some. I do not trust him right now in this form. I've gotten burnt by him several times. See, I kind of like Bassett just on the idea of depth, on the idea of some clean innings against that Oakland lineup. If I'm taking a guy who's going to give me 8 innings on this slate, it's Chris Bassett against that Oakland lineup all day. Like, gun to my head, who's going to give you 8 innings today? A quality start, a handful of strikeouts. It's got to be Bassett. I'm not saying he's going to go out and do it, but I'm saying if I had a gun to my head and I had to pick one of these guys to give me that, I think it would be him. And then I get shot in the head and be dead on the floor when he comes out after 3 with 3 home runs on the board, 9 runs. Yeah, the lefties. That's what we're targeting if we go to A's. That's why I think the A's will be the more popular of those super contrarian value plays. Between the Nationals and the A's, Nats against Musgrove aren't going to get it, where they're going to be facing a pitcher who's owned by more of the slate, who's arguably just as rocky as Bassett this year. That makes the Nats a little bit more interesting to me. Not that I like the team or the spot, and it makes the A's a little bit less interesting. But the lefties are the guys I'd be rostering against Bassett, and that's what I'm worried about with Bassett. Definitely a danger spot there. Surprised Corbin was that high. Pat Corbin? Me too. Yeah, it's difficult to not hit like the 18 to 20 point threshold for a guy who is at least going to book some innings on the way that the FanDuel projections work. But yeah, that's higher than you would expect given who he is and how I dislike him, and not sure he hits that mark. I wouldn't be using him today, like I talked about. I would rather have Patrick Sandoval in Colorado, if that puts it in perspective as far as the Corbin play. But yeah, from the middle of the board, I do think you can get to some Giolito, but I talked about liking the Red Sox, at least the top end. The Ref Snyder play is questionable up at the top. Bayo I like quite a bit for price. A lot of value there, so I like that one a lot. Schmitty, I don't love it. Just on the idea of probably like a 5-inning start with Boone's quick hook for him. Not a lot of upside going up against that lethal Texas lineup. It's not a great spot in my mind. Dunning, similar story. Cheapo pricing. Yankee Stadium, though. France, I think Sheehan's maybe a value guy here. I like that, especially on DK at price, if you can get some innings out of him. So that was the question was DK SP2 price. So is that if you're not considering $8,400 Bayo your SP2? That was Mamba that was asking that. If he's not your SP2 at 84 and you were talking about one of these supreme value guys, dicey. I think I would take that shot on Sheehan. 65 hundo, that's pretty good. You're going up against the Astros. It's not a great spot, but a kid who's got that premium strikeout upside for that price, I think Sheehan would be my guy if I'm looking for that super cheap SP2. And if you're calling Bayo your SP1 and saying that you need a cheaper guy as an SP2. I don't know that that's what you were asking, but I do think that's an interesting spot. So for me, it's, a lot of these guys up top with risk, just kind of threading through these guys. Limited shares of these guys. These guys would be more in play for DK play, obviously, because you got all these high prices. See what I mean, by the way, about Musgrove at 88? You've got all these guys roughly, a handful of hundreds to 1,000 or more, and not projecting as well as him. So I think that's just why he's going to get a lot of popularity on DK. It's just tough to get away from over there. There's not a comparative pivot. FanDuel, it's a lot cleaner. If I don't want Musgrove's popularity, give me $100 more, I'll go to Logan Gilbert. I like the spot. Give me a little bit more than that, I'll go to Bieber or Bassett. A lot more than that, you got these guys, and then I've got Bayo for a little bit less. So it's really simple, straightforward pool on FanDuel. More complex on DK. Definitely more complex. I think you can get away with Gibson on DK at 81, though. Gibby should be here. Gibby should be like a 74. That would be so much more valuable on this slate if Gibby was like 72, 74, somewhere in there. That 81 is a little tough to swallow. Taiwan, 77. Doesn't project well, but, like I said, league average pitchers do give you good games from time to time. 6 to 8 good games from them per year. It's not the right spot to pick on, though. Going up against the Mets, they're capable enough. I almost said going up against the Phillies. He's not on the Mets anymore. He's on the Phillies. All right, I think that'll do it for the show, gang. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Like, subscribe, all those fun things. Check out the site, rotoscouts.com. Jump in the Discord. Discord's free. I'm in the Discord constantly, checking it from my phone, hanging out here all day long, answer questions all day. There's a lot of good people in the Discord answering a lot of questions. A lot of names, faces, if you're one of the people from the old place. Maybe this is the new place. Who knows? Check it out, gang. I appreciate all of you very, very much. If you don't join me over the weekend for some shows, I'll be doing shows this weekend. But if you don't join me over the weekend, have a spectacular weekend and good luck out there. That's it. I'm hitting the end broadcast button. I'll see you.